I want to take a little time to define fawn as a trauma response, and then talk a little bit about how, as an adult, if you have a well-defined fawn response from surviving childhood trauma, doing a new behavior, let's say setting boundaries, is going to provoke a lot of fear and anxiety in your nervous system. And I want to normalize that, I want to validate that, and I want to talk a little bit about how to work with that. So fawn is one of the 4 trauma responses that we have: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Freeze and fawn are the 2 trauma responses that we go to when either fight or flight fails to get us to safety, or in the moment that our brain is assessing threat, our brain determines that fight or flight is going to fail to get us to safety. Then we go to freeze and fawn. So freeze and fawn are really common for anybody who has CPTSD from childhood trauma. I'm also seeing it a lot in adult autistics, probably because it's traumatizing to grow up as an autistic in this world. And so fawn is really common. And fawn is the trauma response that's about mitigating and minimizing the intensity, the duration, the frequency of whatever the traumatizing experience is to be less harmful. So it doesn't keep me completely safe, but it helps me be safer. And fawn works to try to make the person who's doing the threatening behaviors feel better about me, like me more, want to protect me more, want to take care of me more. It also works to try to regulate their nervous system. So fawners are really adept and have highly attuned systems for noticing everything about the other person, the threatening person. In this case, I'm thinking a child is fawning and one of their caregivers in their home is the threatening person. And the child cannot flee or fight to get to safety. And so they're going to default most of the time to freeze and fawn. And fawn is operating to notice all the patterns, all the behaviors, all the little nuances of mood and everything about the caregiver, so that I, as the fawning child, can try to keep that person as happy and as regulated as possible, and also keep them as pleased with me as possible. Because if I'm doing that, then I'm lessening the amount of volatility that I'm experiencing with them. They're less reactive, less often, or the reaction is less intense. So that's how fawn is operating in that way. Fawn is also operating in my mind to help maintain the idea of a loving, safe caregiver who feels affection and care and wants to protect me. Because as a child, I literally cannot tolerate knowing that my caregiver isn't capable or isn't safe or can't meet my needs in the way that I need. And so fawn also operates within my own mind to make it seem like this caregiver is safe and doing well enough with me. And so I believe that fawn absolutely keeps people safer through their childhood experiences and worked to mitigate, minimize, and lessen the amount of times and the intensity at which they were exposed to threat. The problem is when you're doing this every day, because you're growing up in a home that is threatening to you in some way, or in a world that is threatening to you in some way, it just becomes how you relate to people, the fawn response. And you grow up and you're an adult, and now this is just how you relate to people. And one of the problems that can happen is that in adulthood, especially when there are unhealthy relationship dynamics, I'm thinking about something like emotional abuse, fawn actually functions to keep us in proximity to people who are less safe or more dangerous. Now, fawn is still really appropriate if, as an adult, I am in a threatening situation that I can't get out of, like an extreme domestic violence situation. So that's not the kind of relationship I'm talking about. I'm talking about a relationship where I still have agency and I still have freedom. I can come and go. I could be creating distance. I could be setting boundaries, but I'm not doing those things. And I'm running a fawn response That fawn response actually keeps me in proximity to people who might not be good for me longer and exposes me to more unhealthy or dangerous behaviors. The thing that keeps me safe as an adult that I didn't have access to in my childhood is boundaries. And if I'm trying to practice setting boundaries now in my adult relationships, it's going to be utterly terrifying to a nervous system that was conditioned to fawn. It's going to feel like an annihilation level threat because it was in childhood. In childhood, to not fawn would have been to face the threat of annihilation. And that is the fear that lives in the nervous system in the primal part of the brain. And that's what gets activated when I set a boundary or practice a new behavior, create distance. Don't respond to an abusive behavior. Respond differently to an abusive behavior. Don't take care of the other person. Don't manage their feelings. Don't apologize. Don't step in and immediately smooth it over and make it better. Like, all of those things I just listed are really healthy practices for me to be doing. And all of them are going to create so much fear and anxiety through my nervous system. I might feel a level of fear and anxiety that feels completely disproportionate to the situation. And it's because I've activated this trauma system, this thing that lives in my nervous system that is like, oh my God, you are going to die. And personally, I find that the thing that's most helpful in coping with this and healing it is to understand what's happening. Because once I understand what's happening, I stop relating to the anxiety as if it's about whatever move I'm making. I got an emotionally abusive text from somebody and I decided to not respond to it. Somebody engaged in some kind of abusive or unhealthy behavior with me, and I processed it by myself, and then I'm resisting the urge to go and apologize and make it better for the other person. And I'm having so much fear and anxiety, and this can last for days. And the stories my brain is going to tell me is that it's about things in my present day life. And if I stay with it in that level, I'm not addressing the fact that I'm having a trauma response. And so being able to understand that this old trauma thing is getting activated is the thing that then helps me understand my present experience so I can work with it differently. I can live in it differently. I can move forward from it differently. And so I've shared about this in my own practice in a different video, but I'll just share again here that the way that I work with this and the way that I teach others to work with this is in the moment when that fear system is getting activated because you're practicing the new behavior. First of all, just know if you're doing a new behavior that breaks an old survival pattern, it's going to cause a lot of fear and anxiety. So knowing that is super helpful already. And then if you know that, you can say something to yourself like, the fear that I'm feeling, I know that it seems that it's related to what's happening presently, but it's not. This is old fear. I am feeling currently in my body what it felt like when I was a kid. This fear is real, but it's old. This is how terrifying it felt then. This is how dangerous it felt then. And everything in my system is trying to get me to go back into the old survival mechanism. And it's using shame, it's using fear to try to get me to go back because the old system doesn't yet recognize that times have changed. I'm an adult. I can set boundaries and I'm not going to die. And then I update myself into present time. And I'll say things to myself like, I am safe. I don't live in that home anymore. I have my own home. I don't live with those people anymore. I'm not experiencing the same things. I'm not a child. I have agency. I have empowerment. I can drive a car. I have a bank account. I have a job. I can take care of myself. I'm not in the same position that I was back then. And I can set a boundary and I can survive. And then in my own experience, it's just a repetition of that over and over and over again while the nervous system gets updated to the new reality that I don't have to fawn to stay safe, that I can do these other behaviors that keep me safer as an adult, and it's not going to kill me. But in my own experience, when we're dealing with something that comes from childhood trauma and a trauma response, it takes many, many, many rounds to update it. And it doesn't happen quickly. It happens over a long period of time. And the thing that really helps and supports it changing is knowing what's happening and being able to care for yourself differently because you know what's happening. And I hope this helps you.